Hello friends, this demonstration is a continuation of part 1 on withholding tax, where I'll be covering the concept of the rate schedule in this session. Let's deep dive into the session.
I will now continue my demonstration on withholding tax functionality and highlight some key aspects of the rate schedule functionality. If you haven't seen my earlier video on this subject, I recommend watching it as it covers the topic in greater detail. Okay, so these are the steps which we have covered in our previous sessions, and now I'm going to explain you the rate schedule. Now, earlier we have taken a very simple scenario which was uh, percentage. Like you're setting up the threshold and putting the percentage, and withholding tax was calculated based on the percentage. And now I'm going to cover this part, which is amount withheld. Now, one of the requirement actually, like let's say you have, is like you want to accumulate your withholding tax, and based on and within that period basically, and based on that the percentage can be derived. Okay, so let me take you through the session, and let's deep dive into in more detail basically. So I won't cover actually the tax regime. I won't cover uh, taxes because we have to cover basically that one. Now I'll jump to the rate part. So we are going into manage tax codes. Perco, Lithuania. So this is the new tax code which I have created. I've edited the earlier ones. And you can see what exactly I've done. If you see the tax rate type, earlier we have selected as withheld percentage, but now we are selecting as withheld amount rate scheduled. That means my rate periods from start, this is my effective date, starting date, and the end date basically. And and the schedule basis is period anyways, so it's periodically it will keep checking basically. So it's not, there are only two modes, one is document and a second is period. We are selecting the period. Now I'm saying anything, if I'm calculating the withholding tax anything between 0 and 50, the percentage is going to be 10%. I'm going to be calculating based on the 10 based on this 10% rate. And anything beyond 50 and 75 is 12%, and anything beyond 75 plus, and there's no limit basically, in that case I'm going to calculate my withholding tax for with a 15% rate. Okay, so let's create one invoice. I'll create an invoice for, I'm trying to create invoice for the month of December. So I'll create three invoices. The first invoice should create, and I'll try to be within the tolerance so that the calculation is going to be more simpler to understand basically. And I'll try to create with a similar amount, so it's going to be very easier for you to understand like how the calculation works. Okay, so I'm just creating a new invoice. Okay, so I'm just going to say Plutania, enter the supplier. Supply size will be populated automatically. And 205, I'm saying 500. Okay, in the month of December, so I'm not changing the dates. This is first invoice. Let me enter the lines, same amount. Trying, trying to keep it more simple basically for the understanding. Select any other account. Since we are not matching the purchase order, it becomes tedious. Basically, you have to manually create this code combination. Otherwise, these distribution account codes or charge account can straight away come from the purchase order. Okay, so I have created this invoice and I'm going to validate. The moment you validate, it will generate your withholding tax invoice. Okay, so if you see, like, withholding tax has been calculated as 50, which is correct. Yeah, because it's within the tolerance. If it is within the tolerance, it's coming out to be 10%. So it's calculated based on the 10% rate, which is coming out to be 50. Okay, because my withholding, my range was given between 0 to 50. So it's within the tolerance, it came out to be 10%. Now we'll create another invoice. I'm not changing the dates. One more time. Same, copying. I should have copied this code combination somewhere. Okay, let's save this. Validate, and it should create with a different amount, which is 68.75, and I'll show you how exactly this has been derived. And now we'll create another invoice that will have a different value altogether. So we'll just make a note of that. The first invoice was created with 50 and second was with 68.75, and the third invoice should be creating, I'll come to that one. Again, I'm not changing the dates. It should be with 75 now. Okay, so coming back to our chart, right? So like we said, anything we are holding between 0 to 50% should be calculated at the rate of 10%, 50 to 75, 12%, 15, 75 plus 15%. So what exactly happened on invoice one? It's straight away calculated based on 10% because it's within the tolerance. So it calculated 50, and this is what exactly we got, 10%. Okay. Now, because we are holding this amount or accumulating this amount period wise, this line has been exhausted. That means when you're creating the second invoice, it cannot go into this first bucket at all actually, because the 50 has been exhausted, because we have already taken into consideration 50. So now it will look around, it will do the calculation based on the the other slabs basically. So when I calculated this other slab, it can fit only 208.33 out of 500 at the rate of 12%, which will come out to be 24.9996. And the balance amount from 500, so which is 500 minus 208.833, it will calculate based on 15%, which is going to be 43.7505. Now, if you see this amount, it has come out to be 68.75. I can sum this up actually for you. 68.75. So this is what exactly got created for the second invoice. Coming back to the third invoice was very simple. It was 500. Since we have already utilized the first bucket and the second bucket basically, because we have already taken into consideration like up to 75, you have 50 plus 25, you've covered this one, and now we are saying anything above, over and above 75 plus, it should be calculated flat on 15%. So it calculated based on 15%, which came out to be 75, which was calculated at 15%. 15%. Okay. Now I'll just show you what. Okay, I'll create one more invoice for the month of. So having said that, any invoice which is going to be created in future for the month of December, it will always fall. It will always fall in the third bucket basically, which is going to be calculated at the rate of 15%. But if you're creating an invoice in the month of November or any future periods, for which we haven't created any invoice, it will directly calculate it. So I'll show you how exactly it maintains the rate at the period level. I'll change this date to 11th. Okay, so if you see, like, I've created this invoice in the month of November. Now, since we haven't created any invoices and we haven't created any withholding tax invoices in the month of November, that period balance is zero right now, and it falls under straight away. It falls in the first slab itself, so it will calculate based on the first slab, which is 50%. I'll show you those invoices getting created successfully. So let's go to manage invoices, and I'll select the suppliers, Lithuania Tax Authority. So I've created so many actually, like, but yeah, these are the latest one which we have created just now. So these are the ones like 50, 68.75, then 75, and then in the month of November we have created another one, so which is calculated as 50 years withholding tax. Okay, so this was the session to explain you how amount withheld rate type works.
Hope you liked my session. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe to my channel. Thank you.